Hello everybody, and this is Just What the Doctor Ordered. This is the show where we discuss everything Doctor Who, including Series 11 and everything else going forward. I'm your host, Dec, and with me as always is Bri.
Hi.
And in today's video, of course, we are going to be discussing the most recent episode of Doctor Who, that being Doctor Who Series 11, Episode 11, which is otherwise known as the New Year's Special, otherwise entitled Resolution. So, just briefly, what are your brief thoughts to kind of sum up this episode?
My brief thoughts are basically I don't know. I think that it's a good episode in terms of what we got in Series 11. It's a good episode compared to those episodes, but I don't think it could stand up in any other era of Doctor Who. So if you put this episode saying David Tennant's era, Matt Smith's era, people wouldn't jump to like it as much. I don't feel, and it doesn't. Some of the things that happen in this episode don't make a lot of sense, and some of the performances don't really stick with me. But that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is a weird one for me. It almost at points didn't feel like a modern, Series 11 episode. And again, I'm talking, if this is your first time listening to this show, I've never seen Doctor Who other than Series 11. So to me, it didn't really feel like in line necessarily with those other episodes, and it's because structurally this felt different. Like normally with the other episodes of the series, they would be very much just one story going on, where all the characters and all the companions, the Doctor, they'd all be together in scenes. Whereas here, it felt like they kind of split them off. Like you had kind of the Doctor and Yaz who were kind of together the entire episode, and then there was a bit where Ryan split off, and then there was a bit where Graham split off. And it would jump between them and cut between them, which felt like a regular kind of network television show, which was strange. Which is not what Doctor Who normally feels like, at least this series.
No, it felt to me actually. It felt more Doctor Who than Series 11 really had to offer. But I can see what you mean. It didn't fit in with the rest of Series 11. It felt more to me. It felt more like action. It felt more like an action movie with all of the chase scenes in it, all of the different various subplots with characters going on.
Yeah.
And I thought that some of the subplots, obviously, they worked better than others.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly care for I forgot what his name is, the one that Lynn was who ends up dating at the end. One that was
I don't remember his name either.
But yeah, I didn't care for him other than the whole plot he brings into it with the custodians, and I feel that's what I wanted to see, and that's just not what we got. And if they'd focused more on that whole historical setting of the Dalek being split apart into three different pieces, and if they had that as a story, and that's still having the Dalek in it, that would have been a better story than what we got. But I don't. What can you do with Chibnall at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I think, because Chibnall wrote this episode, I think, out of his episodes, this is probably the best one this series.
Oh, yeah.
It's way better than, Saranga and, a lot of the other duds he's had in the series. But I feel like, for this episode, it did feel different, and I think that is a positive thing for the most part. It was just a bit of a adjustment issue at first. Also, it might be because this episode was an hour long as well. They had to stretch it out an extra 15 minutes. Not stretch out necessarily, but you know what I mean. Like they had to, fill that hour, which was again odd because there hasn't been an hour episode this series. But I feel like tonally, this episode came across a lot more fun than some of the other ones have. Because again, this felt a lot more like typical Doctor Who than to what I would know than what Series 11 has been thus far. Like obviously, it's easy to say that with the Dalek in there. And we'll get to the Daleks later, but even just in terms of the kind of space adventure romp type thing, but even being set in the UK, this mostly took place in Sheffield, which I thought was interesting. Now, one subplot I thought was very well done was bringing in Ryan's dad.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Him coming in, Graham opening the door, nope, closing the door and walking off, and I thought, oh, this has got to be Ryan's dad on it. And then, so Ryan lets him in. And so Ryan and Aaron go off to the cafe to have a bit of a chat. And I have to say, Tosin Cole, I have to put my hats off to him here. I've been very up and down with him in the series, and I've always said he's improved as the series has gone on, but this proves that he has definitely stepped up his game. He was great in this scene. Like when he's just sat there saying to his dad, you can't just walk back into my life and try and carry on. We're not on that level yet. We're not there. I thought that was like the way he was like just telling his dad what he should say because he couldn't do it himself. Really good stuff.
I also liked how when Graham was left behind by Team TARDIS, how he gets out all of Aaron's old things and he gives them to him, and I'm not sure if it was a guilt trip or he was just genuinely giving it to him and sharing a moment with him, but how he's like, why didn't you turn up to Grace's funeral? Not for Ryan or for her, but why didn't you just show up for yourself?
Yeah.
I think he was for me, he was the strongest character in this episode. You can easily say that about Series 11 though, but he was the strongest character for me in this episode, just on the scenes alone, and especially the opening scene when one of the opening scenes when they just found the squid substance on the wall, and they go take it back to Graham's house to analyze, and they land the TARDIS, and she crushes one of his chairs, and he's like, it's like, well, you shouldn't just leave your chairs laying. It's like, this is my front room.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we pretty much say that about like any episode in Series 11, that Graham was just the best part of it because he's just amazing. It's still hard to realise if we love him so much just because he is a great character or just because it's Bradley Walsh. But either way, I don't care. I love him. I think he's amazing. And yeah, I think other stuff in this episode, like I think Ryan for me was definitely the standout because I just thought that scene and his story and the way it kind of wrapped up. I do have a slight issue with how it ended. Because when Aaron is basically being sucked out of the TARDIS and Ryan has to go save him, I thought like the way Ryan was just like, oh, I forgive you. I feel like that was a bit quick. I think like what they should have done in that instance was, have Ryan save him, no problem. But, just give him the chance. Like, don't say I forgive you straight off. Like, just give him the chance to, start this turn a new leaf as he said he wanted to do with the new year. Like, give him that chance instead of just jumping to it straight away, because it feels like there could have been a bit more of a extended story going into Series 12 and then going from here instead of just like fixing it, because I don't know how often we're actually going to see Aaron. I doubt that often, whereas I feel like if they would have just kept it as was and like allowed him to like maybe start this new story arc, we would have continued, seen that continue in Series 12.
Yeah, with touching on like how often like the family members show up with their companions, it varies in episode from series to series. So like with Amy and Rory in Series 5, or Series 7, Rory's father would in Norna every episode that they were in. So it depends on like how much of an impact they want the character to have on the stories, and sometimes I don't think that the family members should be included as much, because it's good for building character moments with like this did with Ryan. I thought this worked, but at the same time I also felt that it didn't need to be in an episode, a holiday special episode, which was bringing back the Daleks for the first time in like 4 years. I felt like if it was slotted in halfway through Series 11, or maybe saying and It Takes You Away, or at the end of It Takes You Away, or maybe anywhere halfway after the halfway point in Series 11, it would have worked a lot better. But the scenes were still good in themselves. I just don't feel like they should have been in the episode, because every time it cut back to those two talking, I was in my back of my head, I was just like thinking, okay, yeah, I'm enjoying this, but I want to see what's going on with the Dalek.
I kind of understand that. It does kind of come across because obviously when this is the first classic monster they've brought back, it does kind of feel like, oh yeah, I mean this stuff's great, but we do need to kind of we want to see the Dalek. It's like literally just like fans just going like, we want to see the Dalek. But speaking of the Dalek though, let's just talk about the Dalek. So like, this is obviously a completely different way of doing it as far as I understand it, in the sense that they really focused on the monster outside of the casing, outside of the armor. And I like that. I like the fact that when you first come across it, it is like this really disgusting looking squid creature, which is something that I particularly find very creepy. Like, I have like this, not fear or phobia necessarily, but like I just find like sea creatures especially like really weird ones, like really creepy looking, and like that just ugh. And that's what this reminded me of. So for me personally, I thought the look was very effective. And I have to say, I really like what they did with it in the sense that it could like latch on to people and control people. Like, has the Dalek always been able to do that?
Um, it's been able. I don't. This is the first time that the Dalek has actually been. I'll be honest. This is the first time it's been big enough to actually latch onto something.
Right.
They've done something similar in the past with a human Dalek. So, it was more a Dalek becoming the human,
Right.
so to speak, rather than it being like I'm gonna call it a symbiote because that's the
Yeah,
easiest thing.
that's what it reminded me of. It was very much like Venom. Yeah, but
I
much
don't know
better
if
than Venom.
Oh yeah, I feel I don't know. I don't know if he was still writing this when it came out. I doubt it, but I feel like Chris Chibnall saw something to do with Venom. It's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna use that for the Dalek because in this, especially in the behind the scenes, one of the I think it was one of the writers or executive producers was saying that when Chris was writing this episode, he had the vision of that he wanted to do a Dalek story but differently, and I think that it's a good way to bring the Daleks back, but I can see why it's annoying some fans because it's something new, and Series 11 you can pretty much define it by just saying the word new, and not a lot of people really liked it. I personally like the idea of the Dalek out of its casing and it using Lynn, I think her name was,
Yeah,
and I have to say as well, her performance was amazing
she was great. Yeah,
as yeah, she really gave the feeling of like somebody who's emotional and terrified, and then going completely emotionless when the Dalek took over. I think it was the scene in the TARDIS where it completely short circuits the TARDIS, and then the Doctor's like, "Well, now say that to my face,"
yeah,
and then just the I not so much on Jodie's side. I'll like touch on her later, but from Lynn's side, the character when she was portraying the Dalek, I really felt like she was a Dalek, but not as in like with the armor. I thought that was really well done, and I really like the idea of a reconnaissance Dalek and how it's the first Dalek of
yeah. That was
Skyrim.
cool. Yeah, yeah.
And
I like that idea. You know, them sending out a scout to kind of get a feel for the planet and things like that before they send in the rest of the troops. I like that.
uh, it's the first Dalek ever, honestly, to short circuit the TARDIS and disable the sonic screwdriver. And I can understand why it could disable the sonic screwdriver because the sonic screwdriver was built on Earth this time with Earth materials, and the Dalek was made out of the same materials, basically. So it's kind of like you could almost say it's like well, kind of like sisters, but you get the point. What I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Um,
interesting. I liked it, and what I really liked as well was that the fact it just kind of, you know, built its casing out of scrap metal. Because I've seen a lot of people like complaining about it, like complaining about the look of the suit, but like, I think what a lot of people are forgetting is that this is obviously a one-off. Like, and I'm pretty sure they've said that as well. Is that
yeah.
this is just a one-off, and I thought it was interesting, like the fact that obviously they didn't the Dalek didn't exactly have any materials to kind of, you know, it didn't have a suit with it, so it literally just like built this makeshift suit, and I thought it looked quite cool given the fact it was makeshift. You know, it was all rusted down, it was brown, it was all, you know, like bronze and metallic, and it was still incredibly powerful with that. And even with that, like just the slow build of the Dalek technology, like seeing Lynn like carry the Dalek gun and, you know, shooting that guy, I thought that was really fun. And then when the Dalek actually does get in the casing, and obviously when you see it when it takes on the military, that was a really awesome scene. Just because, again, the Daleks have to be proven to be like these really powerful creatures, and showing them just take on like that military force, just like that, is really effective.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of people say the Dalek was overpowered in this episode, but I don't think it was. There was the first Dalek episode that was ever introduced into Doctor Who, so Dalek, I think it was in series 1. The Dalek easily took out a load of troops, a load of trained professionals, and it outsmarted them constantly. And this is just what this Dalek did in this episode. And I really like the addition of having the missiles come out of the balls. That's never happened before.
Yeah,
It's I think it went broke into a weapons testing facility if I'm not wrong.
I
When
think
it
so.
got
Yeah,
so that's where it got the stuff from, and just seeing it like just completely take out the military was, like you said, I really like that scene. It's probably one of the best scenes for the Dalek in this episode, or one the later scene in I think it was GCHQ, which I actually learned is a real place and it wasn't made up. But um just seeing the way they kind of took down the Dalek, I didn't think it was gonna work, but it worked, and it's kind of random how they were just carrying around the microwave the entire episode. I felt like he was just carrying it around so he could then use it in the resolution of beating the Dalek.
Yeah.
Because obviously Ryan hadn't talked much about his dad leading up to this point, so you can kind of excuse the fact that them saying that, oh yeah, he's this like massive great inventor and he's able to make all of these things, because we didn't know up to that point, so it's just introducing us. But if they just left it off as the Dalek just being destroyed just like that, I wouldn't have been happy with it. But the way they did eventually do it, and the Doctor outsmarting the Dalek, that was really well done, and how it latches onto Ryan's dad's back, or Aaron's back, and demands to be taken back to the fleet, and how she tricks it and ends up sucking out the TARDIS. At that moment, with the music going on as well, I honestly thought that both Aaron and Ryan were going to die, and it had me on edge. And that was the first time I can honestly say that in this series, that it had me on edge, because I don't want to say it, but a lot of the episode's resolutions for me in Series 11 were kind of predictable, and this episode had me, like, I went through laughing, I went through almost crying, and then a shock in the all in one episode, and I have to give credit to Chris Jimmer for that, if I don't give him credit for anything else.
Yeah. I mean, so you thought Ryan and Aaron were going to die?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I kind of thought Aaron was going to die, and I still think maybe he should have done. In a way, like, I would have been perfectly fine if they would have done that, because I think it would have been earned at that point. But the fact he survived, again, I'm just interested to see what they'll do with him in the future. Ryan, that would have been interesting if they would have killed him off. Especially because obviously a big complaint has been the three companions in terms of like them being too many. So to kill one off, I would have been a bit cheesed off if it was Ryan though, just because I feel like he is one of the better ones. But then again, his arc coming full circle. I guess I could see that though. That would have been interesting. I think other stuff in this episode though, like I think Jodie was great in this episode. Like this is one of her best episodes. Just like the way she managed to hack into the Dalek system and create a hologram. Tell that to my face, like we mentioned earlier. I want you to see my face when I'm saying this to you. That was really good, like showing how serious she was, because seeing her reaction to the Dalek was fun. In the fact that she was clearly just very, very serious, very hands-on, very switched on about the entire thing. I liked that.
Yeah, I think she did have a really good performance in this episode. Some of the scenes I do feel like she didn't have as much presence as I wanted her to have in the episode, but overall I say this is definitely one of her best acted episodes in all of her run so far. But as like my favorite scene with her in this episode was where she's actually facing down the Dalek in the casing and she gets it to scan her, and it's like she has that moment with the Dalek. Every Doctor does something with a Dalek. The Ninth Doctor was completely lost his temper in front of a Dalek, and I think the 10th Doctor was just strolled in casually in front of the Daleks, and she stared it down in his face and got it to scan her. And then I like her interactions with it as well, how she kind of just makes fun of it, because that is something the Doctor would do. If the Doctor has an advantage over the Dalek, the Doctor's going to milk that for everything it is. And just a line, what do you call this, looked in retro scrapyard? I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. It does make a lot of sense in the fact that this is like one of the only times where the Doctor is going to have an advantage over the Dalek. So like just to see her completely ravishing in that was quite funny. And I just think all of her moments were really good, especially because I really feel like Jodie's really stepped up. Like not stepped up necessarily. I always thought she was really good, but like she's really kind of coming into her own. I feel like in the back half of the series. So seeing her in this episode really stepping to that was really good. And again, like her interactions with the Dalek were very, very good. The voice actor, I don't know his name, who plays the Dalek, he was just fantastic. Like I love the voice, like it's just great.
Nicholas Briggs is the voice actor for the Dalek. He's been the voice actor I think since series 1, and I'm happy they got him back, because not a lot of things were brought back from series 10, from series 1 to series 10, so I'm happy that they actually brought him back for the voice. The Daleks wouldn't have been the same, I don't think, without his voice behind them, because he kind of gives them that kind of like that menacing or terrifying feeling to them, especially when you just hear the exterminate. And another thing I really liked about the Dalek, the extermination sound effect and the way it looked when even when she blasted the gun or when the Dalek shot somebody, I really liked the way it looked. Even though you could say the military guys, the way they kind of like died was a bit dodgy, but the the way it looked was amazing. And I actually found something out that the sound effect that they used for the blaster was actually taken from the classic series. I think it was Remembrance of the Daleks. So I thought that was really interesting that they brought that back, and I feel like that sound effect really gives it weight and you to the extermination. Whereas before, when the Daleks were exterminating people, it kind of felt like a pew pew kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it would have been interesting. But I feel like just overall for like the Daleks, I think like this was a cool and interesting way of doing it. Like definitely something that felt unique and something that I didn't really expect, especially because it added like a bit more of a personal aspect to the
yeah,
Dalek, which normally they're pretty much literally just exterminating robots, whereas at this point there was actually some depth to them, and I quite appreciated that.
yeah.
So also, the only character we haven't really spoken about in this episode is Yaz, but she got nothing to do in this episode once again. We were just talking about this before we started recording, but apparently Chris Chibnall has said that he's got a story plan for Yaz for Series 12. Please bring that on, Chibs, because she's had nothing this series, and I think Mandip Gill is like contemplating leaving the show. She's just like, again, it's not worth it. This was not what she was promised. So yes, is there anything else in this episode that sticks out to you?
There was some references, some not so that didn't really stick with me, but I don't know if you picked up it. When the Doctor called Unit, they actually reference
Yeah, Kate Stewart.
Kate Stewart.
Yeah.
I don't think that he should have brought her up in this context, especially in the way he did it, because I don't know if people outside the UK would know, but to me that was quite clearly making a joke on Brexit.
Yeah, it was a Brexit. Yeah, it was a Brexit reference. Yeah, it's just kind of carrying on the trend from this series, playing on the political element.
But I don't understand why they needed to call Torchwood in the first, not Torchwood, sorry, Unit in the first place, because the Doctors dealt with Daleks before. The Doctors dealt with a whole invasion of Daleks before, like on a scale more bigger than one Dalek. I don't really think that she needed help from Unit, other than I felt like he just wanted to include it to maybe like say to the fans, look, these characters do still exist, because before Series 11 he did confirm a list of characters that he wasn't going to use ever again. So I feel like this was him saying, yes, she still exists in this universe and we could bring her back eventually in the future.
Was Jack Harkness on that list?
No, he wasn't.
Good, because I'm not gonna lie. When they were talking about this, I was like, are they gonna bring in Torchwood? Are they gonna do this? And again, I'm speaking purely as a fan of John Barrowman here, not necessarily as a fan of Torchwood or anything. Because again, I haven't seen it, but I was just like, oh my god, is John Barrowman gonna show up in this episode? And I'm not gonna lie, that would have made this best episode of the series.
Oh yeah.
That would have been awesome. I do hope they bring him in like at some point in Jodie's run. I'd like to see that. But yeah, I found that reference a bit strange because again, I took that completely as a Brexit thing, and I was like, yeah, this is just them continuing on the political themes that Series 11 has sort of played on so far. But yeah, it was interesting, and I'm sure. I mean, when they started mentioning Unit, I was like, okay, this is clearly something, she's trying to get into contact with a character who's pre-existed and stuff. And I was waiting for someone to show up, but obviously they didn't. But yeah, that was an interesting one. So in terms of the rest of the series, where would you rank Resolution?
I'd say definitely top 5. I'd put it maybe just below Kablam, which would be 4th for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm probably in a similar place. I think I'll go one higher than you. I think I'll probably put it higher than Kablam, but lower than Demons of the Punjab and lower than Rosa. I just thought this episode was really fun. Like it just had like this really fun vibe to it, even though it was quite dark in places and quite sad with like the stuff with Ryan. I really just found this episode to be again a lot more reminiscent of the Doctor Who that I was familiar with. Rather than the stuff we got in Series 11. So this actually felt a lot more in line than what I was expecting. And I did enjoy it for that. And again, as my first proper introduction to the Daleks for watching this show, I thought it was very, very fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, so I'm interested. Because I know this is getting a separate Blu-ray release, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to have to pick that up. Because I think Series 11 comes out in like just over or just under 2 weeks here in the UK on Blu-ray, and then I think Resolution comes out like the week or two after. So that's cool. So yeah, that brings us to the close of this second episode of Just What the Doctor Ordered. So thank you guys for watching. We don't quite know. Again, we mentioned this in the last episode, but we're not quite sure when the next episode will be, what we're gonna do. Obviously, if there's any like big news, we might like do like news roundup type things, and again, if I get my arse in gear and start watching the other series, then we'll maybe do like big series reviews for the new Who stuff. But all that being said, thank you guys for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and make sure you subscribe to both of our channels and hit that notification bell so you don't miss when we upload the next. And we hope to see you guys again in the next one.